Welcome to Frequently Speaking. This is your host, Maxwellness. Now, here on this podcast, we're going to start to break down words that we speak outwardly and how their vibrations create what we frequently see. Now, in today's episode, we're going to delve into priding factor. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Frequently Speaking. So, in today's episode, I want to go into a little bit more about this internal and externalization about pride. And if you've ever really wondered, how people get proud, where do we separate this sense of being proud and also having this instilled value of having pride without the ego? And today, that's exactly what I want to dive into. I want to target 4 key points here. And the first one being determining the difference between pride and proud. What do these words mean to us, and how are they internally settled in and planted long time ago? Also, we want to look at the externalization and the internalized strengths that we have from either being prideful or being proud. And also, we want to look at this ego driven factor of both of their polar aspects. So, this sense of whether we want to be prideful and how the ego drives that negatively, but also how we can be prideful and how our ego can positively charge that energy. And also, I want to finish this off and wrap it up by distilling into those states. So, distilling into the state of being prideful and distilling into the state of being proud. This word or this concept, some may look at it as a value, some may look at it as a principle, some may look at it as a trait. For me, I really want to go into and unravel and start to really look at where these seeds were planted when we were younger, and also as they grew and kind of created these versions of us and gave us our own characteristics and our own uniqueness, how that actually is reflected and projected into our reality. So there's going to be a practice at the end of this where I go a little bit deeper into how we can start to distill these things and start to see the factors that are in our life in which we are allowing ourselves to be fueled by, and how this sense or this potion of power and pride can actually either intoxicate us or liberate us. So let's get into it. So again, I want to look at this determining of the differences, right? In attaining pride and also being proud. How can we come to distill the qualities into embodiment? How do we distill this sense of pridefulness or this sense of being proud into an actual embodiment that is serving us and is positive and making an impact in not only our lives but others as well? So, if pride is an obstacle, we're going to find some ways of how we can tap into that pride and bring balance into how we can be shifting back and forth from pride and feeling proud. So, I just want to start off by bringing into your mind, right? This quote of swallowing your pride. Mostly you hear this in a man's story as a young boy. When we have come to swallow our pride or balance the pride of privilege, we can find ourselves dancing between the lines of value and even vanity. This is really a dance that many of us come to find ourselves in, whether by our doing or not. This is that sense where we start to come into contact with these internal traits and these internal states of embodiment, but we're still learning about how to go about it. So hearing this quote and these people tell us, swallow your pride, it gives this subconscious, let's say, connotation of something that needs to be suppressed, whether that be your vanity or that be your value. Now, we start to navigate these challenges of parental downplaying and later wading through these waters of self-worth, or finding the awareness of consideration within the heads held high and trying not to drown in the fullness of ourself. This is where we start to look at this concept of how do we build this pride for ourselves in a healthy and positive manner. When we have this sense of parental downplaying and we start to really look at how can we actually be prideful and also proud at the same time? How do we positively charge that if this parental downplaying has really been downplaying self-worth subconsciously? So this art, right? It's really a dance, and it comes about within our relationships a little bit later on in life, and we start to play around with it when we're younger and we're just learning the steps, but not only to others but ourselves as well. We start to determine these factors that make up what we feel proud of and how you embody this pride. These are all things that we need to bring to the surface to dance our dance in authentic grace when life sends up this mirrored partner to show off your moves. This is something that I really wanted to target, which is the core of this, which is this troublesome obstacle and challenge that so many of us are facing nowadays in a sense of authenticity. And when you're in your authenticity, you have this innate embodied sense of pridefulness and you have this innate embodied sense of being proud. And this is really what this piece is going to go into. And we're going to begin to examine and look at and learn and really uncover what this authenticity is and how this sense of pride has been tuned to what we've been frequently speaking in our subconscious mind. So let me ask you a question. What does it mean to have pride? This is something that you can take into a meditation, you can journal about, use it as a prompt, but this is a really serious question. And it may seem simple, but really, when we get down to it, it's what we actually think about our self worth and self value. Now, the sense of having pride can come from having a bank account that's continuously filling, a social or familial status of a successful career, or even a masterful way of fulfilling the perfect cocktail for friends based on all the proper notes. You know, this is something that I reflected on as well. And when I used to do bartending and also like do party promotions and stuff, a lot of the mixology, right? This was a beautiful thing for me because I would make these fantastic cocktails for people, and I really prided myself on that capability and that skill in a way because it brought happiness to people's lives, and it was an ability for me to express this creativity. I could look at somebody, have a few minutes of conversation with them, and already know what a perfect cocktail would be for them. Make it, and when they would taste it, just the look on their face and how the conversation flowed after that was just ultimately beautiful. So this sense of providing value in an externalized state is also something that is there where we start to find pride in these things. So we find pride in many things, right? Now, this is the expression of something deeper, though. The root of this bright beacon of exuberance and confidence is the embodiment of being proud. To be proud is a deep characteristic of knowing. When you know what it took to grow that bank account, reach those career goals, and have learned all the unique whiskeys across the South to craft the best old fashioned, this is a sense of being proud. We start to find security and confidence in this knowing to be expressed. This is when it becomes externalized, because we look at express and we look at externalize. It's all about the excess, the outside, the external. Now, you can surely have one without the other, and this is what we will come to explore in this conversation, because yes, there is a difference between pride, and yes, there is a difference between being proud. And just like we looked at, pride is in a sense of something that is a little bit more externalized. Now, we can go into the polarity of that and see how the ego can be intoxicated off, all this pride, and you have these really like prideful people that are negatively charged in their ego. But also that externalized version of pride has that positive charge where you see a person walking with their head held high, and they find pride in their work and the work that they do, and they complete a sculpture, and you see this happiness and this smile on their face. But this for me is what I really look at is from the internal. And you see this sense of proud beaming so strong from the inside that it is externalized into this sense of being proud. So I want to dive into this a little bit deeper and to expand a bit on pride, right? It's all external. So it's how it's seen and also how it's shown to other people, but also to ourselves. This externalization also leaves room for illusion, though. How many times have you told yourself that the bank account, car, partner, or career will provide you pride while still not feeling quite proud of yourself? Maybe it's because you didn't earn it honestly. It's not what you expected of yourself, or even because you just feel undeserving of it. Either way, there's this opportunity for ourselves and others to create the illusion of pride without being proud. This illusion gives way for guilt and other pressures of inadequacy. So, this is what I mean by this sense of externalization. Anything that's externalized is subject to shift and change and create fallacy. Because we all know, this whole thing of the world is all an illusion, and it's what you create, and it comes from the inside to the outside. This is that whole concept actually embodied, rather than just thinking it and saying it in some cliche Instagram post. This is what it looks like in reality. When we have that sense of pride in our car, or in our trophy wife, or in our basketball star husband, whatever it may be, all of these things are externalized. And when we have that and we place that pride within these things that are externalized, that is when that illusion is there, and it lets in these other ways of these dense emotions such as guilt and shame and regret and all these different things. And it starts to bring about these reflections, these shadowed reflections of maybe being undeserving, or maybe having dishonesty of how you got it. So these are some things that we want to look at in this polarity of these senses that are within us and also how they're externalized. So let's go into being proud, right? So to be proud comes from an inner and almost divine sense that's cultivated at our very young years. It's how we felt when we did certain things, when we won an award, or when we hit that home run in baseball, or when we finally got that grade that we were looking for in school, or we got that praise from our mom or our dad. The emotional connection that we made with the physical actions of certain things when we were younger created these factors that we soon prided ourselves upon. Does this make sense? So let's look at money, dominance, approval, appearance. These are all externalized things that invoked a feeling of being proud. The determining things that validated something that was also there began to actually cultivate this relationship between how we expressed and what we embodied. So, looking at this sense of being proud, we stem this from something that was really just emotional. We didn't have the money, we didn't have the bank account, we didn't have the partner or the cars, we didn't have these externalized things that were in the material world to actually connect to this emotion. So, that doesn't necessarily negate the emotion, but the seed that's there is the sense of being proud. And it all matters about how we cultivate and form that over the years. And as children, as we're going through development and adolescence, everything is based on an emotional connection. That's all children have from the beginning until the end. And until the end, this is when we bring it into the actual externalized world and we start to feel that pride. So, say in a sense of money, the first time you sold your first cup of lemonade, and then you felt really proud when you came home and all the lemonade was gone and you had all this money, and you were like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of myself. You didn't maybe necessarily know the words, and if there wasn't a helpful parental figure that was there to steer that sense of being proud, not into the money, but into the action and the emotional connection that you had with that state of being, then this is where we start to embody these externalized versions of pride. Now, when the externalized pride is expressed, it's important to understand and identify this absolute value of what it is to be clear and decisive. We can find ourselves in indecision or wrestling between perspectives, bouncing back and forth between the past and the future, between anxiety and depression, stuck in duality. For what? When there is this misinterpreted sense of proud being projected, or when we are seeking to rewrite and uncover it, we have to find what it is that we truly value within the pride. So I give this as an example. When you're looking at something that you're wrestling between, right? Whether it be two perspectives. And for lack of a better terms, this is what cognitive dissonance is. So say, for example, somebody's telling you that a certain way of going about being, right? If you want to be a better father or you want to be a better mother, and somebody comes into your life and gives you this other perspective, we begin to wrestle with this and we go back and forth because we have this sense of pride in being a father or being a mother. But that pride is in the externalized version of this perspective that you've held on to. It's not really shifting into something that you really want to change and you really want to grow. So we become stuck within that sense of duality, in that externalized version of pride. So we see that pride in being a parent. We see that pride in being the best mechanic. We see that pride in being the best person at work, whatever it may be. But rather than dissolving and unraveling those instances to come back to that real deep set of what you're actually proud about, this is where we start to look at these ego driven factors and we start to say, okay, this is where I externalized it and what am I actually connecting to it. So we never really ask ourselves, why this Louis V bag? Why this affection from a partner? Why the validation from my father? What is the relationship between my truth of being proud and expression of pride? These deep questions never really get answered because this unraveling is not really present. It's just non existent because we're stuck in this same perspective. So, this exploration can lead to seeking through the illusions and the unraveling of where it's coming from and start to begin to give clarity of this inner knowing, this inner proud. And it becomes to harmonize this prideful state of actually being proud. Dissolving guilt from these illusions strengthens the learning to depend on our true self. There is pride in depending on your capabilities. But to look at our capabilities, we have to go a little bit further. We have to see the capacity and see our ability. To look at these things takes an unraveling. What is the capacity that we've had in this sense of being proud when we were younger? What is the capacity of that emotional connection that we have to these externalized things? Because sometimes we can look at that as maybe it's driving us into that direction to hinder our abilities rather than strengthen and being able to learn that true self. So let's go a little bit deeper into this sense of illusion, right? So, to be able to tap into these capabilities and see through these illusions is a practice of our higher faculties that invites in truth, uncovering the mask of what we may need to attain that sense of pride from. What I look to encourage here with this perspective of exploration is to base our externalized pride in true being of proud. For those finding duality of indecision and confusion to be problematic, it's my goal to give a wider perspective into the balanced view of where we can create a new horizon for ourselves to really express clearly what it is that we are truly valuing within. This is the liberation into authenticity. This is a deeper look into everything that you've had a sense of pride for, everything that is externalized, and begin to unravel that to really begin to see what this actual decision is and what this clarity is of the true self and where this emotional connection to being proud comes from. This is going to deepen the embodiment of what this actual sense or this state internally truly is of value. When we begin to dissolve and unravel these egoic driven factors of what we pride ourselves on, we come to see this new horizon. We come to see that there's this new balance between what we are actually creating and how we're creating. Are we creating because we are proud, or are we creating to be prideful? Now, I know that may seem like a very close and very um, fine line between those two, but this is where that subtle energy comes in. We start to really look at these factors that make up our life and how we externalize them, and we begin to find this deep, compelling value of the things that truly pull us to these outside factors. And this can bring into realization what we are actually proud of. Discovering this truth and frequency of proud from a pure state within gives us the ability to receive the pride without even having to seek it, or within affection, excessive options, fear of failure, and even outside validation. We can begin to create from a clearly harmonized state a vision that is both grounded in proud and fired up with pride. It's not the vehicle en route, but the way in which you sustain the journey from within. Attention to this interior and exterior is the way in which we can express how proud we are, absent of the excess of ego. When we find ourselves absent of this ego, all we begin to really see the totality of it. We see the negatively driven sense of our pride. We see the negatively driven and charged sense of being proud. And we can begin to see in a wider perspective this full duality of this expression and this externalization of being proud of something, creating from the proudness that is within to create pride without. This is that sense of distilling. Distilling is taking what is actually there and putting it through your own filtration system. So you heard me use the words like unravel, things like that. This is that same process of distilling, because anything or any form of, well, rather, not a form, but a process of alchemy takes this distilling process. Just like when you think of alcohol, the best alcohols that are out there, or liquors or spirits or whatever it may be, they're distilled, 5, 7 times, because it's about this refinement process. How fine and how subtle can you get that taste? How fine and how subtle can you take that line of what you are being proud of and shift that into the pride that you express and reflect out into the world? So I want to finish off right before we get into this practice with this last prompt question. What are the determining factors that fuel you as you ride in that pride with drive? Is it based from a state of being proud, or are you basing it out of being prideful? So here's the practice for prideful factors. I want you to take a piece of paper, right? And let's draw a horizontal line across the middle. Input the two opposing points of your duality situation. Say, for example, clarity and uncertainty. You can put clarity on one side of the paper and uncertainty on the other side of the paper. Step 2, you're going to list 5 things for each that are most compelling you to them. So, for example, for clarity, you can say, gives me a better sense and vision. For uncertainty, brings a state of anxiety and indecision. Step 3, we're going to compare them and see the commonalities in them and write what that is. Example, they are all superficial, or they are all emotionally filling. Step 4, we're going to notice where you are having this duality conflict. Take this commonality and see its effect on you in that space. For example, the superficiality is leaving me feeling drained energetically. 5, list this as the value for both spaces. Then distill from them both what that value actually is. For example, I find value in being proud of these superficialities, but feeling empty. fulfillment being the value. And finally, number 6, write your distilled value for both on the horizontal line. These values will be the core focus for you to begin to harmonize and create a clear vision for you on the horizon. For example, within clarity, you can say fulfillment would be the value. So when we're looking to attain and create clarity, this is what we're actually proud of. We're proud of the fulfillment that we receive, and that is what we are actually valuing. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Frequently Speaking. And that's a wrap for Priding Factor. So I hope you received a little bit of wider insight and a little bit of more perspective on how we can see the ways we are actually being proud and the ways in which we hold pride for the things that are in our life, whether they be external or internal. If you would like to schedule a call with me and to bring some of these practices into play, into more embodiment, click that link below or shoot me a message and ask me about the Keys coaching method. In the Keys coaching method, this is where we break down a lot of these internal structures and we look at them for things that are already there within ourselves. We look at the doors that are locked behind anxiety, shame, guilt, all of these things without in a sense of dissolving them or overcoming them or ridding them or releasing them, but really leveraging that power and bringing it back to our internalized self kinesthetically. If you like this episode and would like to explore more perspectives like this with me as we get a bit more intimate and intricate look into our internal vibrations, be sure to tune in to next week's episode and subscribe for more. Until then, keep frequently speaking what you frequently see.